We'll be discussing Mertonian norms, which were given by Robert K. Merton. In his book, The Normative Structure of Science, that was published in 1973, he outlined the norms or the values that govern scientific communities. That means there is an outline by which, or a framework by which the researchers have to follow or they have to adhere to. Merton was the first thinker who applied sociology to science, and therefore he belongs to the old school because this is the time of 1973, and he was the first back then to apply sociology to science. Now these ethos of science or these values of science, they dictate or they present with some norms and some cultures of scientific researchers. They tell what is morally right for the researcher to do. Should a researcher be self-indulged or should a researcher be selfless? So this is the framework which provides the guidelines which acts as a guide. It acts as ethical advice and it is known as informal in expression and also in transmission. It is informal because it is not like a rule or a policy which is formal in nature, which is binding or something, but these are morally binding. Okay, so these act like guidelines. Now, there are 4 of these norms which in short are combined to known as CUDOS, where C stands for communalism, U stands for universalism, D stands for disinterestedness, and OS stands for organized skepticism. Let us discuss these one by one. Communalism. The idea of communalism states that the scientific idea or the scientific claim is not owned by one but by all. That means if a scientist has discovered something, it is not in his right to have a claim on it. Yes, he can have the intellectual property on discovering something, but the ownership will not be by one person but by all. Property cannot be claimed, but recognition will be given. And that is why we reward and we recognize the efforts that are done by the scientists, because we have to recognize the efforts that they have put in. Scientific claims should not rest on who is making it. Okay, so these claims should not only focus on who is making it. Also, secrecy is not accepted. And as a result, this communalism, the idea behind communalism, it promotes collective collaboration. The second norm is universalism. This is also known as communality, which says that the findings of science are the common property of the whole scientific community, and it has no bias. That means that the particulars of a scientist, particulars as in the gender, the race, that ethnicity, they have nothing to do with the ideas that he produces. For example, if a woman scientist has made a very big discovery or has produced something very useful, so it is the responsibility that we have to accept it as the common property, and there is no regard of the socio-political status. That means whether it is done by a man or a woman, it will be regarded equally. Whether it is done by someone from a high class or a low class, it will be regarded equally. So it disregards any kind of socio-political status. Moving ahead, the third norm is disinterestedness. That means the focus of the scientific researcher should be on identifying the truth. The motive behind a research, a study, or a discovery should not be about own profits, and the focus should be on the benefit of common scientific enterprise so that everybody gets benefited. Also, the scientists should be rewarded for their selfless devotion. It should be recognized whatever they have contributed to science. But the interest, the motive should be identifying the truth and making it in a way that it benefits the larger society. And it should not be done for any kind of selfish reason. Now, the last one is organized skepticism. As the name suggests, it says that the scientists should not take things at face value. They should see the evidence, the proof of everything and verify it. What I am reading, what theory I am reading, or if something new has come up, it is the responsibility of the researcher to verify it. This should be in both methodology and also the institutional codes of conduct. All the ideas that are proposed, they should be thoroughly tested, and thus every idea calls for regular and structured scrutiny. That means if there is an idea, you have to cross verify it. You have to find out why did it happen, and did it really happen, and how did it happen. So this is the process of scrutiny, that they should not be taken at face value. Let us discuss some questions now. Question number 1 is, according to R.K. Merton, which of the following constitute the ethos of science? So as soon as you read the words ethos of science, the norms, the values, everything should struck at once. You should realize what the question is asking. So we know that it is CUDOS. So the option will be option number 3, where organized skepticism is there, universalism is there, and communalism is there. He has not talked about interestedness because he has talked about disinterestedness. That is, it should be, the researcher should be selfless. He should not do it for profit motives. And cognitivism, he has not talked about cognitivism in his norms. Question number 2. The counter norm of organized skepticism is, the counter norm means what is the norm, or what would be something that goes against the concept of organized skepticism. So the options are organized dogmatism. When we think about organized dogmatism, you have to understand that it means that there is no verification, that any theory that is given, it is easily accepted. It is not challenged. Any of the old findings that are there, they are not challenged. So when there is no verification and when it is not challenged, then it counters what organized skepticism talks about, because it talks about scrutiny, it talks about verification, it talks about proofs. Therefore, organized dogmatism is the right answer, that it is the counter norm of organized skepticism. All others, the option number 2 and 3, have no reference to what we are discussing here. So I hope you got this lecture. Thank you for watching.